Amina, sorry to trouble you again. Her new blood pressure medication, make sure it's right on time. Chikobi's voice was honeyed and full of concern as he walked into his wife's luxurious bedroom. He held a cup of morning tea, but his eyes weren't on Mrs. Adana, who was smiling from the bed. Instead, they were fixed on the swift hands of the young nurse, Amina. Amina gave a slight nod, her eyes still on the medicine tray. Yes, sir, I always remember. 9 a.m., right after her meal. Good, very good, Chaik smiled, placing the tea on a small table by the bed. You see, Adana, I told you, with Amina here, we have nothing to worry about. Mrs. Adana reached for her husband's hand, her voice affectionate. I know you worry about me, my dear, but Amina is even more careful than I am. Chaik chuckled, then turned back to Amina, his tone suddenly curious. This new one, it looks a little different from the old kind, doesn't it? Did the doctor give any special instructions? His question was too specific, too focused on one tiny pill. Amina's heart skipped a beat. She looked up, met Chaik's gaze directly, and calmly replied, Nothing special, sir. The doctor just said this new type would help keep her blood pressure stable long-term. Stable long-term, Chaik repeated, nodding slowly, a strange glint in his eye that only Amina seemed to catch. Well, that's wonderful then. He kissed his wife on the forehead and turned to leave the room, leaving a heavy silence in the air. Mrs. Adana suspected nothing, but Amina couldn't stop staring at the small, pale blue pill on the tray. Chaik's question echoed in her ears, not like an inquiry, but like a confirmation. A confirmation of what? A chilling sense of unease started to creep over her. Amina shook off the cold shiver that had just run down her spine. Perhaps she was being too sensitive. It was normal for a husband to worry about his wife's health, and asking about a new medication was hardly strange. But that look, the way he repeated the phrase, stable long-term, with a poorly hidden satisfaction, it lingered in her mind. She quickly pushed the stray thoughts away to focus on her work. For an orphan like Amina, this position wasn't just a job, it was a miracle. Memories of lonely years in the orphanage, of sleepless nights spent studying under the dim yellow light of her nursing school dorm, all of that relentless effort had culminated in the moment she earned a nod of approval from Mrs. Adana Okoro. To be the private nurse for Adana, a powerhouse she had only ever seen in the papers, was a dream she could hardly believe was real. And Amina did not disappoint her. She was more than just a nurse following orders. She remembered that Mrs. Adana liked chamomile tea in the evening to help her sleep, that she enjoyed listening to soft classical music in the afternoon, and she even remembered the story of a lost first love that Mrs. Adana had only ever told to her. Amina cared for her with the dedication of a medical professional and the warmth of a family member. It was this sincerity that finally broke through the powerful businesswoman's tough exterior. One afternoon, as Amina was gently massaging Adana's weary legs, the older woman suddenly spoke, her voice warm and deep. I sometimes wonder, if you weren't here, how empty my life would be, Amina. Amina smiled. It's an honor to care for you, ma'am. No, Adana said, shaking her head, her gaze affectionate. You do more than care for my health. You bring a sense of peace to this house. Before, my life was just meetings, numbers, and silence. You've brought life back into this place. She paused, then took Amina's hand. Later, when I'm stronger, what are your plans? With your intelligence and dedication, you're meant to be a great doctor. The words made Amina's heart flutter. No one, aside from her teachers at school, had ever placed so much faith in her future. Mrs. Adana didn't just see her as an employee. She saw her potential and was nurturing it. In just a few months, the line between employer and employee had vanished completely. Mrs. Adana treated Amina like the daughter she never had. She taught her how to appreciate art, told her stories of risky business deals from her youth, and listened to her private thoughts and fears. For Amina, who had never known a parent's love, Mrs. Adana had become her family, her firmest anchor in the world. And because she had finally found a family, Amina knew she would do anything to protect it. But in this warm home, Chikobi was a puzzle. On the surface, he was always the model husband, but Amina felt that something was off. His concern was strange. He never asked about Adana's general well-being, only about her medication. "How long will this bottle last, Amina?" he would ask. "When did the doctor say she might be able to stop the blood pressure medicine?" he'd inquire another time. Most suspiciously, Chaik always insisted on picking up his wife's prescriptions himself. He claimed it was his way of showing he cared, but each time he returned with the medicine, he wouldn't give it directly to Amina. Instead, he would go into his private study for a while. One time, Amina brought him tea without knocking first. She saw Chaik sitting at his desk, a few of Mrs. Adana's blood pressure pills spilled into his palm, scrutinizing them under the lamplight. Seeing her, Chaik flinched and quickly closed his fist, but he recovered just as fast, forcing a smile. "Ah, just checking if they're getting damp from the humidity. It's been so muggy lately." Amina nodded and quietly backed out of the room, her mind racing with doubt. The explanation made no sense. Who checked medicine in such a strange way? From that day on, Amina knew she couldn't trust this man. Amina's suspicions came to a head one Saturday morning. It was the day she typically organized the small family medicine cabinet. As she was wiping down the bottles, her hand froze on Mrs. Adana's familiar blood pressure medication. Something was wrong. The label on the bottle looked newer, and its edge was slightly misaligned from where she remembered it. Her nurse's intuition screamed that something was terribly wrong. Amina carefully used her fingernail to pry at the corner of the label. The paper peeled away with surprising ease, and underneath it, another label, the original manufacturer's label, was revealed. Amina held her breath. The name on the original label wasn't for blood pressure. It was a powerful cardiac drug used only in emergencies. If taken daily in small doses, it wouldn't save a life. It would slowly erode the heart's strength, causing gradual weakness until it finally failed. All the symptoms would look like a natural illness. A cold dread washed over her. This was no mistake. This was a deliberate, calculated murder plot. At that very moment, Chaik's voice drifted in from the balcony just outside the medicine room window. He was on the phone, his voice hushed, but in the quiet air, Amina could hear every single word. "Relax. Everything is still under control," Chaik said. "Just do as I told you. As soon as she grows weaker, I'll inherit it all. You'll get every penny you're owed." Each word was like a hammer blow to Amina's mind. The poisoned bottle in her hand and the confession on the phone clicked into place, forming a horrifying truth. Chaik was plotting to murder his wife for her fortune. Amina's heart was pounding in her chest. She heard Chike end the call. With what little composure she had left, she carefully restuck the fake label, placed the bottle back in its original spot, and slipped silently out of the room just before he walked in. The moment the door closed, Amina had to lean against the wall to keep from collapsing. She knew then that Mrs. Adana's life was now in her hands. Amina lived in terror for the rest of the day. Every time Chaik smiled at his wife, a chill ran down her spine. Every time he asked about Adana's health with that feigned concern, her chest tightened. She had to act, but how? If she told Mrs. Adana the truth without any proof, who would she believe? A nurse who had only been there for a few months, or her husband of so many years? Chaik would easily deny everything and paint her as a liar. The opportunity, or rather, the life or death moment came that evening. As usual, after dinner, Amina brought a medicine tray and a glass of warm water to Mrs. Adana. Chaik was there too, sitting beside his wife, reading her an article from the newspaper. Everything looked so peaceful, a scene of domestic bliss so perfect it was chilling. Mrs. Adana smiled at Amina and reached for the blood pressure pill, the fatal pill. "Thank you, my dear." In the split second before she brought the pill to her lips, Amina's heart stopped. All hesitation vanished, replaced by a single, urgent thought. She had to stop her. "Wait, Mum." Amina moved quickly, her hand gently but firmly closing over Mrs. Adana's, stopping her. Mrs. Adana looked at her, surprised. "What is it, Amina?" Chaik looked up too, his eyes flashing a razor-sharp glare at Amina. "What's wrong? It's time for her medicine." Amina's throat went dry. Under Chaik's scrutinizing gaze, she knew she had only one chance. She looked directly into Mrs. Adana's eyes, her own eyes pleading with all the sincerity she could muster. She couldn't explain, couldn't offer proof right then and there. She could only bet everything on the trust Mrs. Adana had placed in her. Her voice trembled, but remained steady as she spoke softly. Please please, just trust me this one time. Don't take it. Chaik's glare was a mixture of fury and suspicion. Amina, what are you doing? Her health is not a game. But Mrs. Adana raised a hand, silencing her husband. She looked deep into Amina's eyes and saw not recklessness, but genuine fear. The intuition of a woman who had navigated the business world her entire life told her this was no simple matter. Chaik, please step out for a moment, she said, her voice strangely calm. I need to speak with Amina alone. Chaik was stunned, but didn't dare defy his wife's command. He stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. Once they were alone, Amina recounted everything in a trembling voice: the switched label, the name of the dangerous drug hidden underneath, and the phone call she had overheard. When she finished, Adana's face showed no panic. Instead, it turned cold and sharp. The frailty of a patient disappeared, replaced by the steeliness of a powerful businesswoman. She didn't cry. She needed facts. First things first, she said decisively. We need proof. The very next morning, while Chaik was out playing golf, Amina carefully took one of the pills from the switched bottle. Following Mrs. Adana's instructions, she took it to the most trusted private lab in the city, a place Mrs. Adana knew Chaik had no influence over. The results came back in just a few hours, sent directly to Adana's private email. It was a single, chilling line: active ingredient, digoxin. Incorrect dosage over a prolonged period will lead to heart failure and death. They had their first piece of evidence, but Adana wanted more. She wanted to hear the truth from the traitor's own mouth. That evening, she handed Amina a very ordinary-looking fountain pen. This is a voice recorder. Find a way to plant it in his study, somewhere discreet. Amina's palms began to sweat. She waited until Chaik went into the bathroom, then slipped into his study. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She quickly placed the pen inside an old pen holder on his desk, aiming the microphone towards his chair. They didn't have to wait long. That night, believing his wife had taken another dose of the poison and was weakening, Chaik let his guard down. Adana and Amina sat in the bedroom, holding their breath as they listened to the audio feed from the device on Adana's phone. They heard Chaik dial a number, and then a voice answered. "Hello, it's me," Chaik replied, his voice a low whisper. "The last batch of the special medicine is almost gone. Get another one ready for me." The person on the other end hesitated. "Is this really a good idea? What if we get caught? What's there to be afraid of?" Chaik's voice turned venomous. "Just keep supplying it. She's getting weaker, right on schedule. When I get my hands on everything, you'll never have to worry about money again." The call ended. In the bedroom, Adana closed her eyes. A single, final tear traced a path down her cheek, not of sorrow, but of validated betrayal. She opened her eyes and looked at Amina. Her gaze was now as cold as ice. "We have enough," she said. In the heavy silence of the room, the only sound was the sharp breathing of the two women. Adana held the phone, but her fingers were trembling so badly she couldn't dial. She had faced countless rivals in the business world, but she had never felt this weak. Amina gently placed her hand over Adana's, lending her a bit of warmth and strength. "I'm right here with you." Reassured, Adana took a deep breath. Her hand steadied. She dialed the number decisively, her voice ringing out, clear and steely, with no trace of hesitation left. "Hello, this is Adana Okoro. I'd like to report a crime, an attempted poisoning. Yes, right here in my own home. My witness, Miss Amina, is right beside me." Just as the call ended, they heard the sound of Chaik's car pulling into the driveway. He was back. "Amina, go into the other room," Adana said quickly. "Let me face him alone." But Amina shook her head, her eyes filled with resolve. "No, I won't leave you alone." The bedroom door flew open. Chaik walked in with a smile, holding a glass of orange juice. "My love, drink a little something to get your strength back. You look a bit." His smile vanished when he saw Amina standing there, not in the position of a nurse, but as a protector, shielding Adana. "Amina," Chaik frowned. "What are you doing here? Get out of the way so I can talk to my wife." "It's over, sir," Amina replied, her voice quiet but incredibly firm as she met his furious gaze head-on. "What did you say?" Chaik roared, throwing the glass to the floor. "Who the hell do you think you are to talk to me like that? Move." He raised his hand to shove Amina aside, but at that exact moment, the door burst open again. Nobody move. Police! Two plainclothes officers rushed in, followed by a uniformed team. The room was thrown into chaos. Chaik froze, the color draining from his face. One officer stepped forward, holding a warrant in his face. "Chaik, you're under arrest on suspicion of the attempted murder of Mrs. Adana Okoro." While Chaik was still in shock, another officer had already found the poison bottle on the table and the audio recording still open on Adana's phone. The evidence was overwhelming. Cornered, Chaik became frantic. He pointed a shaking finger at Amina and screamed, "It was her. She made it all up. She's trying to frame me. She wants to steal the inheritance." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Adana, who remained seated on the bed, her expression terrifyingly calm. She looked directly at the man she once called her husband, her voice icy and devoid of all emotion. "We have the truth. On the day of the trial, Amina didn't arrive at the courthouse as a quiet nurse in a white uniform. She sat in the front row, right beside Mrs. Adana. Mrs. Adana had personally chosen an elegant suit for her, not for show, but to make a statement. Amina wasn't just a witness. She was part of the truth, a member of her family. In the courtroom, Chikobi looked gaunt and pathetic, completely stripped of his former elegance. He kept glancing toward Adana, searching for a glimmer of hope, but was met only with cold silence. The trial didn't last as long as some expected. The prosecution presented irrefutable evidence. First came the lab results for the pills, clearly identifying the presence of the poison, digoxin. Next, the audio recording was played for the entire courtroom to hear. Chaik's venomous, calculating voice filled the room as he discussed the special batch of medicine and how he would inherit it all. All of his previous denials now seemed utterly ridiculous. When called to the stand, Amina calmly and clearly recounted everything, from her initial suspicions to the moment she discovered the switched label. She didn't exaggerate or embellish, she simply stated the facts. She never once looked at Cheek, keeping her gaze fixed on the judge. Finally, Chaik's lawyer made a last-ditch effort, suggesting that Amina had fabricated the story to win Mrs. Adana's trust and fortune. But when the judge asked Mrs. Adana if she believed Amina's testimony, she replied with a single, powerful sentence, "I trust her with my life." That statement sealed Chaik's fate. The verdict was announced. With concrete proof of a deliberate and sophisticated murder plot, Chikobi was sentenced to 15 years in prison. As the bailiffs led Chik away, he shot one last look at Adana and Amina, his eyes filled with hatred. But the two women didn't flinch. They stood together and walked out of the courtroom, leaving the dark past behind as they stepped toward the light. After the trial, the media and public were still buzzing, but Adana and Amina left all the noise behind them. A few weeks later, Mrs. Adana hosted a small, intimate party at her home, inviting only her closest friends and most trusted associates. No one knew the reason for the party. They assumed it was a celebration of Adana's recovery and narrow escape. When all the guests had arrived, Adana, dressed in an elegant gown and looking fully restored to her powerful self, stood up to speak. She thanked everyone for standing by her, then turned her gaze to Amina, who was standing quietly in a corner of the room. "In my darkest days, Adana's voice was warm and emotional. There was one person who not only saved my life, but also restored my faith in human kindness." She walked over, took Amina by the hand, and led her to the front to stand beside her, much to everyone's surprise. "Many of you know Amina as my nurse," she continued, her voice swelling with pride. "But tonight, I want to formally announce to you all that from this moment on, Amina will no longer be my nurse." She paused for a moment, then broke into a radiant smile. "She will be my daughter, Adana Amina Okoro." The entire room erupted in applause. Amina stood stunned, tears of joy streaming down her face. She had never dared to dream of a day when she would have a full name, a complete family. Adana pulled her into a warm embrace, soothing the trembling back of her new daughter. But Adana's gift to Amina didn't stop there. A few days later, when it was just the two of them, Adana handed her a folder. "I remember you once told me you dreamed of becoming a doctor," Adana said. "My daughter's dreams can't be left unfinished. This is your acceptance packet for the most prestigious medical school in the country. I've taken care of everything. All you need to do is focus on your studies. Leave the rest to me." Amina held the folder, feeling the weight of all the love and trust it represented. Her life, once that of a rootless, orphaned nurse, had officially turned a new page. The path to becoming a real doctor, a person who could save even more lives, was now wide open before her. Years passed, and Amina poured all her passion and gratitude into her studies. With her natural intelligence and the unwavering support of her powerful adoptive mother, she not only graduated with top honors, but also became one of the most outstanding medical students of her class. The dream she once had was now a reality. Amina put on her white coat, officially becoming a doctor at the largest hospital owned by the Okoro Pharmaceutical Corporation. She was no longer the timid nurse of the past. Dr. Adana Amina Okoro was now a confident, capable woman with eyes that shined with empathy and wisdom. She was beloved by her patients for her dedication and respected by her colleagues for her solid expertise. It was here, in the hospital's research department, that she met the love of her life. His name was Kelechi, a brilliant young pharmaceutical researcher with bright, passionate eyes. He was leading a project to develop a new drug to treat heart disease, a strange and poignant coincidence. They first met at a seminar on new treatment methods. Amina was captivated by Kelechi's passionate presentation, and he was deeply impressed by the sharp questions she asked. They started talking at first about work, about chemical formulas and clinical trials, but soon their conversations stretched long after their shifts ended. They realized they shared the same core ideal: to use their knowledge to save people and bring hope to patients. They shared everything, from the joy of a successful project to the sorrow of witnessing a life that couldn't be saved. Love came to them as naturally and gently as breathing. Kelechi loved Amina's strength and compassion. In Kelechi, Amina found a kindred spirit and a steady shoulder to lean on. One evening at sunset, after they had successfully saved a critically ill patient together, Kelechi took Amina's hand in the quiet hospital corridor. "Amina," he said, his voice sincere, "I don't just want to save lives with you in this hospital. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Their wedding was intimate, yet elegant. Adana stood at the altar, giving her beloved daughter's hand to the son-in-law she trusted completely. Looking at the radiant, happy smiles on Amina and Kelechi's faces, she knew her daughter had finally found a safe and perfect harbor. Years later, after life had settled into a peaceful and happy rhythm, Mrs. Adana did something no one expected. Alone, she drove to the prison where Chaik was serving his sentence. The meeting took place in a small, cold room, separated by a thick pane of glass. Chaik had changed completely. His hair was much grayer, and his old, sophisticated air had been replaced by the weariness and hardship of his years in prison. When he saw Adana, he was stunned, and a faint glimmer of hope flickered in his eyes. They picked up the phone receivers. "Adana, you really came?" Chaik's voice trembled. Adana looked directly at the man who was once her husband, her expression serene, without a trace of resentment. "I came to say goodbye, Chaik." I'm sorry," Chaik mumbled. "Every day in here I regret it. I know what I did was unforgivable." Adana was silent for a long moment before she spoke softly. "I came here today to tell you that I forgive you." Chaik's eyes lit up. "You forgive me? Really? Adana, then when I get out?" "No," Adana interrupted, her voice still gentle but firm. "I'm forgiving you not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I'm forgiving you so my heart is no longer weighed down by hatred, but forgiveness does not mean forgetting." She looked deep into his eyes, enunciating every word clearly. "Your betrayal that day ended all ties between us, forever." With that, she placed the receiver back on its cradle without waiting for a reply. Adana stood up, turned her back, and walked away without a single backward glance. She left Chaik sitting there, frozen behind the glass, with the harsh reality that he had lost everything, including the final chance to reclaim his past. As she stepped out of the prison gates, Adana took a deep breath. The sky outside was clear and blue, and she felt a weight lift from her heart. The old chapter of her life had truly closed. A year later, joy knocked on the Okoro family's door once more. The hospital where Amina and Kelechi worked was buzzing with congratulations as they welcomed a beautiful baby girl with the same dark, sparkling eyes as her mother. They named her Ifunanya, which in their language means love. The name was not just a wish for her future, but a tribute to all the love that had brought them together. On the day Adana came to visit her granddaughter, she didn't arrive as a CEO, but as a grandmother, her arms full of gifts and her eyes twinkling with joy. The moment Amina placed the tiny baby into her arms, Adana felt an extraordinary warmth spread through her, filling every empty space that had lingered in her heart for years. She gazed at her granddaughter's sleeping face, a face with no trace of deceit or calculation, only pure innocence and peace. She once had everything: money, power, status, but all of it combined could not compare to this feeling. Chike's betrayal had once made her think she could never again trust in the idea of family. But then came Amina, and now Ifunanya. Holding Ifunanya in her arms, with Amina and Kelechi looking on with loving eyes, Adana smiled, a smile of pure contentment and peace. Finally, after everything, she had found her true family.